Uhuru, Uhuru. My name is Coco Lewis. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am the International Secretary of the African National Women's Organization. I'm also your MC for today. Tonight's political education. Women Must Lead with Yesterday Oramila is a series of live monthly political education programs from the African National Women's Organization, led by President Yesterday Oramila. Tonight's topic is Black Girl Magic, Black Excellence, and Other Mating Calls of the African Petit Bourgeoisie, a critical discussion about class aspirations and contradictions among Black women. In today's discussion, President Yesterday will be referencing articles published by the Burning Spear newspaper's column, Harriet's Daughters, Representation Matters, Matters to Capitalism, and Killing Becky Means Struggling for Black Power. In addition to an unequal equilibrium by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. If you are registered in advance, please check the email sent today for the links in the article. There will be opportunity to raise issues pertaining to this PE during our Q&A period, but please comment and engage throughout the program. African Women Must Lead is being multi-streamed live on the Burning Spear Burning Spear TV, and Annual on YouTube, and on Annual's page on Facebook. Please take time to like, share, and follow us on these platforms. Annual is also on Instagram and Twitter for folks who want to keep up with us. We are doing what we are doing between broadcasts. If you'd like to know the exact dates for future streams, make sure to follow us and check our website for details, which is annualuhuru.org. Uhuru, let me welcome President Yesterday.
Uhuru, comrades, and Uhuru, thank you so much, Comrade Coco, for that introduction. Uhuru, I see the comments coming up, loving it. So we know the title of this. I titled it is African, Black Girl Magic, Black Excellence, and Other Mating Call of the African Petit Bourgeoisie, a critical discussion around class. And the reason why we thought this was a really important political education to give is because we feel like that our community, our nation is often mesmerized or confused by this question of, class contradictions. And unlike Issa Rae, I'm not rooting for everybody Black. I'm rooting for everybody who wants to destroy this parasitic monster called colonialism so that we can actually have, so that we can actually have freedom. Uhuru. I'm not sure why. We can't solve it now. Sorry, comrades. Just looking at some notes. Because we are supposed to be streaming on YouTube and on Facebook per this platform. So if it's not showing on Facebook, then folks could come on over to YouTube and take a look at it, and we'll rectify that during our next broadcast. But I am really happy to open up this conversation, as Comrade Coco raised before, that I will be referencing articles that I wrote for the Burning Spear newspaper and the chairman's book, An Uneasy Equilibrium, African Revolution versus Parasitic Capitalism. Just laying the political basis for why we are opening up this discussion. And I don't want it to make it seem like we're some sort of like petty organization that just kind of like hates on Black women because we love Black women. We want Black women to be politically astute and defined and definitive in what we actually believe, and not really be swayed by the politics of exceptionalism, which is what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, I just wanted to open up with a passage from An Uneasy Equilibrium to kind of set the political tone of what we're going to be talking about today. And this is on page 83 for those of you who may have the book. And the title of the section is called Road to Socialism is Painted Black. And it says here that unlike Marx and Lenin, we are African internationalists. we African internationalists deny that there have ever been anything progressive about capitalism. Capitalism was born in disrepute of the rapes, massacres, occupations, genocides, colonialism, and every despicable act humans are capable of inflicting. Capitalism was not responsible for some great, otherwise unimaginable leap in production, which, despite its contradictions, resulted in human progress and enlightenment. What capitalism did was to rip the vast majority of humanity out of the productive process in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Australia, and what has come to be known as the Americas. The hundreds of millions dead due to the slave trade and slavery itself, the millions exterminated everywhere Europeans ventured. These are people whose hands were forever removed from a relationship with nature that would result in production. Europeans achieved their national identity by way of this bloody process. This is not something that only happened a long time ago. The world's peoples are suffering. uh, the world's peoples are suffering. What's my place? The consequence of capitalism's emergence right now. Locked in the colonies and the indirect rule of neocolonialism, restricted to lives characterized by brutality, ignorance, and violence in the barrios of Americas and other internal colonies characterized as Indian reservations and black ghettos, kept under the paranoid, nuclear backed, armed to the teeth watch of military forces born of state power that has its origins in protecting the relationship between capitalism and imperial pedestal. Capitalism has been the absolute factor in restricting our production and development. It has concentrated productive capacity in the hands of the world's minority European population that sits atop of the pedestal of our oppressive reality. Capitalism was not the good progressive force that is the precursor for something better in humanity. Capitalism was a disaster that rescued Europe from a diseased, feudal existence at the expense of Africans and the rest of the world. And the reason why I put that out is because, we're having this discussion today um, with having an analysis around capitalism, having an analysis around the colonial mode of production that would make a discussion like this very necessary, in particular to half of our nation, African women who are out here, what we see visibly celebrating the contributions to this idea that we are supposed to be fitting into the system as opposed to destroying it. So when we raise up, these tropes that black excellence, and black girl magic, we are talking about this idea that not more than idea. Yeah, this ideological warfare that is being waged upon African women and African people, that it says that we have to prove to our oppressor that we can match what they do. And most oftentimes when we hear these phrases uttered, it's not Asada Shakur black magic or black girl magic. It's not some other African woman out here struggling for freedom. They don't say, "Oh, girl, black magic to you," or black excellence. It's always in the venue of you're trying to ascend to the throne of the African petty bourgeoisie and compete with white people in their space, or just be amongst white people, the majority bourgeois population, when you talk about black excellence and black girl magic. And I also find that the term black girl magic is truly offensive because it removes from any black person or any black woman or femme the identity, the idea that she has accomplished whatever she has through hard work and determination, and that there was no magic as a part of that at all. And I know it's the saying, but it's just also a removal of any agency of a black person to be able to accomplish anything. And I don't think that anything that we do is magic. I think that, of course, I know that whatever we do is because we can do it. Because we are African people, we are the ones that figured out the suns, the stars, the moons, and how it aligns in the galaxy before white people. We are the ones that have built cities and kept ourselves clean and was able to amass all of this wealth throughout Africa and had these really advanced systems of living, even in the rural and village life, and come up with these amazing feats for humanity. So for us, for me, being a ballerina is not black girl magic. Do you know what I'm saying? Or being a doctor or a neurosurgeon is not Black girl magic or Black excellence. It's just expected because this is what African people have been doing for our entire history. And it's only when we are talking about these advancements or these accomplishments within the realm of white life and the bourgeois population, which has taken so much from us, has told us that we are not anything, that I can see why these sort of affirmations are good. But we really want to talk about like how it's really entrenched in the African petty bourgeoisie, and this assumption that everybody wants to do these things as a part of the African petty bourgeoisie, as opposed to tearing down the system that oppresses Black folks. So the next thing section I wanted to read from, again, is from the Uneasy Equilibrium by the chairman. It talks about the class question and how it's found in the colonial contradiction. And this is a short one. It said, "It is the liberty of the oppressed, the colonized, and the enslaved laboring masses of the world currently involved in a massive attempted jailbreak. We trying to get out, y'all. That will destroy capitalism, the prevailing dominant social system that has the world in lockdown. Therefore, the crisis of capitalism does not cause us anxiety as revolutionaries. It does cause anxiety to the African petty bourgeoisie, though. The African petty bourgeoisie is very concerned about the economy and very concerned about how their money is doing in their 401k and all these other kinds of things that helps them maintain their aspirational upclimb to the African petty bourgeoisie and neocolonial. And that's why all the neocolonial rulers in Africa keep their money in the banks of Europe as opposed to in the local economy. These are all the kinds of things that worry the African petty bourgeoisie and neocolonialists. So therefore, I'm continuing, therefore, the crisis of capitalism does not cause us anxiety. We know that this is a crisis of the parasite that has, since its historical emergence, required the lives and resources of Africans and others for its success and survival. And it needs us more than just that. I'm going to stop there. It needs us for more than just that. It needs us to also uphold this idea of democracy in the world, and uphold this idea that what the colonizer has established is a good thing for all people. And even as we've seen evidence in the world that that's not the case. That's not the case, that there is a parasitic relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. And there's only that dichotomy because of colonialism, right? And because this system of the oppressor versus the oppressed is still intact. So yes, again, I hate, like, I'm repeating myself because I'm about to get into like the whole study, but like really looking at this as a political basis for this conversation, as opposed to something that is not rooted in a politic that is about liberation for African people, and really trying to wedge out of our community, our nations, and particularly for African women to make smarter decisions and really be dialecticians and looking at the scope of who we are celebrating and why we are celebrating them. Are we celebrating them because they're Black? Are we celebrating them because they have a track record of things that pushes us toward freedom? And most likely, you're not hearing about those African women or men who are pushing us toward freedom in the way that, and they're not being celebrated in the way like the African petty bourgeoisie or anybody's aspiring to the African petty bourgeoisie is doing it. So I'm mentioning a few terms. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I'm making the assumption that everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about when I mention the African petty bourgeoisie. So I'm just going to share some definitions. So the petite bourgeoisie is the colonizer language. It's the French language. It says little bourgeoisie, and it's a social force that is not part of the bourgeoisie or the ruling class, right? The ruling class is the white oppressor nation, but the petite bourgeoisie is a part of the colonized African nation or colonized nation, and they are aspiring to be like the bourgeoisie, but a class comprised of both administrators for the bourgeoisie and business owners who have control of some means of production. The petty bourgeoisie is an ever shrinking social force. As capitalism develops, it increasingly monopolizes, knocking many of the petty bourgeoisie into the working class and are an unviable social force. So, the time as the petty bourgeoisie is ever shrinking because, the economic and social conditions of capitalism will take it from you, give it to you one day and take it from you another, especially if you're the petty bourgeoisie. So the bourgeoisie, the bougie, the class that rose to power through the rise of capitalism. This is usually the white ruling class. It is a ruling class that privately owns and controls the means of production under the capitalist social system. So they are the administrators of capitalism, and the petty bourgeoisie is the administrators for the administrators of capitalism. So like we are the in between men. So neocolonialism is something that we're going to talk about here too. And this is the imperialist foreign domination of a nation or people directly, indirectly through control of the economy and social system using one or more members of the dominated nation or people as administrators. I think it's important for us to understand this because this is this is the thing that we're challenging today, right? Like, oh, we're celebrating these African people who are in positions of power and can do this and do that and make and sitting there with white men and white women and be able to, people are saying that they're doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, well, that doesn't mean much of anything. Right now, there's like a upheaval in Africa because the African petty bourgeoisie, the neo-colonists, are being ousted by the people per se and the workers who are saying we want something different because you've been giving away all the things that we need in our country to make ends meet, to be upstanding people. And so neo-colonizers cannot be trusted. And neocolonialism doesn't happen somewhere far away because we happen to be in the United States. We see them every single day. It's your mayors, it's your council members, it's your presidents, it's your vice presidents, it's all these these compradors who work for imperialism and keep the system and the status quo going. And all they need from you is your support. And that's why it's really important for us to really say like you either like this is the question around colonialism and not riding the wave of colonialism is really important for us. You either with it or you're not. You're either going to jump on the train or you're not. And there can be no like line in between where you're straddling by saying I'm opposed to socialism, I'm opposed to capitalism, but yeah, I really support, for example, Kamala Harris or any other person that ascends to the seat of power in the white world, in the white colonizer world. So I really love this. Let me make myself small because this needs to be. I really love this framing of Black women that Comrade Jay, who is our background producer, and you'll see her on Sunday in our talk about Africa, Haiti, and the rest of the African world. But she likened African women who are in support of these imperialist constructs as Black women mammying for colonialism. Like we are the trusted holders and keepers of colonialism, and we revel in any praise that this capitalist colonial system gives us to be its champion. So, for example, in the 2020 race for the U.S. president, when Biden won and Harris won, Black women put Biden in office in 2020. Will they do it again in 2024? So right now they're getting us primed up. Like, yeah, Black women, we got to go out and vote. We got to go do this thing again because we can't rely on anybody else to do this for us. We have to do it, and we have to put who we want in power, even though the person that we're putting in power has been a known enemy of Black people with their policies, even if who they're putting in power is somebody that has been a top cop, even if we're putting in power somebody who has given no evidence of a long-standing trajectory in history that they are for the liberation of African people, as opposed to as opposed to what they're doing. They might give you little things here and there. They might do a little dance, a little shuffle, what I'm saying? Might go to a hip hop concert, in her backyard, what I'm saying? But these are not the things that would indicate that somebody's down for your African liberation or your liberation from anything. Like this is how colonialism shakes and jives and puts on the face of progress, when in fact it's the face that's of progress that's oppressing you, because that makes you not want to fight for your actual liberation. So when we look at like people like, Kamala Harris, who has won the love of Black women everywhere, but she is a self-pronounced top cop. She is somebody who was a prosecutor and has a horrible track record when it comes to Black people and putting Black people in prison. But we out here in our Chucks and Pearls, not we. Some of y'all out here in your Chucks and Pearls, and Chucks are sneakers. You're out here in your Chucks and Pearls celebrating Miss Kamala Harris and her alignment with the culture of whatever it is that Blackness, as opposed to actually representing and wanting to see the survival of Black people, the liberation of Black people, and the freedom of Black people. As a matter of fact, when there was this whole thing happening around, African countries not totally aligning with the U.S. policy around Ukraine, I mean, they sent out the women into the world, the white women, the Black women, everybody in between women out into the world to kind of get people back on board, right? They send, I don't know all the names, but they sent this, I think the the wife went somewhere, and there was in Africa, and Kamala went somewhere in Mexico, and all of these women were dispersed throughout the world to kind of get people back online and get them swooning back to U.S. imperialism. And so, like, for us living in the United States and Black women who consider themselves, politically aware, like we really have to begin to define for ourselves what it is that we're asking people. What are we asking these people who consider themselves our leaders? What are we getting from them, right? What is the political basis for our support? And right now, all they have to do is do something that we kind of like, and then we can forgive all of the track record that they've shown us that they are an enemy, and for the same imperial colonial state that has been robbing us of everything that we have been trying to fight for in terms of our freedom. So like we can't compromise on that at all whatsoever. And so the Kamala was one example, but one of the articles that I wrote was called "Representation Matters," which is another phrase that people like to use, like because they want to say that it's good to have a Black person in high places so that little girls and little boys can look toward them as somebody who they could aspire to. But like my hero as a little Black girl, because I still am, is not Mrs. Obama or Oprah Winfrey. My hero is like Harriet Tubman, who was somebody who was an unrelenting fighter for freedom and did what she had to do in order to ensure that she saw freedom of some sort in her lifetime. And that included taking people out of what she identified as, what was slavery, like hard labor slavery, to a place where she thought that there was an easier life for them to live and that they can really enjoy the success of themselves. But more than that, she fought for self-determination and other things. These are my heroes, but you don't get to see those heroes lined up in the news. As a matter of fact, the only time that you get to see them lined up in the news is when they're enemies of the state. Harriet Tubman was an enemy of the state. Assata Shakur is an enemy of the state. And there is no Black girl magic. There is no Black excellence. And there is none of that representation matters sort of language around any of these women, including the other women that you don't even know their names that are fighting for the liberation of our people. And these are, examples of Black excellence is Black revolutionary women who are really working toward that end every single day. So I'm going to read from my article, Representation Matters to Capitalism. And as Coco said at the beginning of this program, if you registered for this, if you RSVP'd in our mailbox, you should have received links to these articles, so you should be able to read along with me. And if you haven't, I'm going to go slow, and I'm not going to read the entire article. I'll be jumping around. But this article was in response to Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala from Nigeria, who became the Director General of the World Trade Organization. We're going to talk about the World Trade Organization as a colonial institution, but there were so many questions to African women around this in Africa and other places about what we thought about this Black woman being appointed to one of the highest positions in the colonizers' institutions. So this is why I wrote this. So I'm just going to go ahead and read it. In February of 2023, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala in Nigeria became the first woman, an African, to be selected as a Director General of the World Trade Organization after newly elected U.S. President Joseph Biden confirmed her nomination. That says a lot. This is the World Trade Organization, and the president of it, the Director General of it, has to be confirmed by the President of the United States. Let's read on. She has been described as strong, stubborn, and persistent when it comes to her finance negotiation style while working in colonial and neo-colonial institutions. There is no doubt that this description is meant to garner the appreciation of gender activists and feminists alike who clamor at the idea of women holding their own in male-dominated spaces. Markedly, this is an achievement for white power imperialism, who are bolstering her as an African and a woman whose entire personal, educational, and professional history has been groomed by capitalist imperialism. And I go on in the article to say how she's been groomed, but primarily is that this is not an African working class woman. This ain't the woman who struggled from the bowels of the streets of Lagos to ascend to where she is. She was born into the African petty bourgeoisie. She was educated in bourgeois institutions. She was given jobs in bourgeois institutions, and she learned how to solve problems as a bourgeois, petty bourgeois analysis on it. This is the way that we get out of poverty, is by investing in capitalist procedures. This is the way that we increase the chances of so and so getting more money, is by working out these sort of policies and contracts with the colonizer and putting colonized nations, colonized peoples deeper into debt and in these horrible relationships with the colonizer, while they continue to steal these resources out of these nations. This is not an institution that was built by the African working class for the interests of the African working class. This is an organization that was built by the African, built by the bourgeoisie, and sustained all of the people that I've seen in the World Trade Organization are in terms of leadership positions are the petty bourgeoisie of the colonized nations, all of them. And so there is no part of what she's doing or what any person who might be appointed to any of these roles that we find so advantageous are going to be doing specifically for African people. And there is this thing that people often say, well, you can't expect them just to work for African people. Why not? Why not? You can't expect somebody who's the leader of a nation, a leader of this, that, to actually do things specifically for. Why not? You know, why is it that we don't have any confidence in ourselves? Why is it that we have no demands of anybody that ascends to these positions and make critique about what they're doing in these positions? Why not? Why can we not demand or expect that a Black person who is going to be put in a public office or a private office that's supposed to be helping Black people, why don't we have these demands of what they should and should not be doing, right? And if they don't do what it is that we expect them to do, we should have critique of what that they have not done what we expect them to do. But we have no expectations. Therefore, anybody that they shuffle in front of us is somebody that we can applaud. And that is the problem with these identity politics that says that we should like somebody who is ascended to a position of vice president or director general or whatever it is of these organizations, because this is what colonialism has told us that we should be celebrating, as opposed to our own liberation. And this is what happens when you destroy the Black Revolution of the 60s and killed all of our revolutionary leaders. And the peaks of it that we get, the little smidgen of it that we get talks that we get, we revel in it, because these are the things that we identify with. Really, even the petty bourgeoisie identifies with things like the imperialists, the anti-colonial. They revel in that. They like to see that. But what really makes them feel confident in what it is that they've been able to acquire is really their connection with the bourgeoisie, really their connection with the ruling class of capitalist colonialism. And so, Ngozi Okonjo is no different. So I'm gonna continue. The bourgeois propaganda machine has portrayed her appointment as a achievement for African women. And let's be clear, she didn't come up from the slums of Lagos. She is a daughter of a doctor who was her mother, and an economist who is a king, and her father, who worked for the UN. She was born into Nigeria's petty bourgeoisie. Her primary and secondary education was spent at private schools that were established by English colonizers with the purpose of indoctrinating the natives. We need to look at this question of institutions, educational institutions. I read somewhere a while ago that people in the the occupied territory of South Africa, don't even learn about their own history in school. But neither do we. There's an attack on that here in the United States. We don't even know who the hell we are. We learned about the colonizer before we learned about ourselves. And trust and believe that any petty bourgeois or bourgeois institution educational in the continent of Africa is not set there to liberate African people from mental slavery. It's about making them the administrators of the status quo, all of the things that allows for this machine to keep working to take from us, take from African people as we struggle every day just to get roads, to get light, to get water, to get food, all of these things that are so important to human life. These are the administrators that keep things going for the colonizer, right? So from there, from that school, she attended a top ruling class institution of higher learning, Harvard and MIT, earning degrees in economics. She then went to work for the World Bank, the most vile, one of the most vile institutions in the world when it comes to impoverishing struggling, colonized nations, right? She worked for the World Bank, where she rose to the position of vice president and what did she do in that position? No one knows. Nobody has investigated what she has done in terms of her track record at the World Bank. But here she is, she rose to the position of vice president before becoming Nigeria's first female finance minister, a position she held twice under two Nigerian presidents, Goodluck Jonathan and Olusegun Olutoyin-Aganga. And this, of course, is not the path that 97 million Africans in Nigeria can take, who represent the total number of the population who live below the poverty line. So none of her financial or economic contributions or education helped her resolve or helped her bring together any persons to try to solve the problem that there are 97 million Africans. That's more people than exist in some countries in the world, right? But there's 97 million Africans alone in Nigeria who represent the total number of people who live underneath the poverty line. None of her accomplishments help solve any of that, right? It is this population and their participation in the informal or not directly tied to capitalist production economy that contributes greatly to the actual working class social and political economy. And, we really, I was really looking into her, but even though we're talking about this particular woman, she's an example that we can take and apply to anybody Black that we see. Why are we celebrating these accomplishments? Why? What is their track record for Black people? What have the things that they have administered for the colonizer brought in terms of solutions and benefit to Black people, the people who are most oppressed, people who are still suffering? 97 million people in Nigeria alone live below the poverty line. And Ngozi, even though she's one person, she was the finance minister. She wasn't financially responsible for making sure that people were out of poverty in Nigeria. She was making sure that the machine is still going in Nigeria, that is going to make sure that they are still connected to the imperialists and what they need from Nigeria, as opposed to what the people need from the governing forces in Nigeria and in other places that may also have these administrators for the colonizer. So really looking at the track record and why is it that we don't demand more from ourselves, and then we are befuddled as to why we don't get what we don't get. Oh, he can't do this, she can't do this, she's only one person, but so are you, so am I. And if I was in that position, I'd be like, this is trash. We shouldn't have the WTO in our country. It's robbing us. The World Bank, everybody knows this, every colonized nation knows the financial bind and imprisonment that these organizations do to tie the hands of any self-determination emerging out of these countries, period. And there's nothing that you can say from inside or outside that can tell me any different. It's just been the way that it is. All of these, if you look at just some of the policies that they do, that you can't import, you can't export, you have to import more than you export. You can't use local product. You know what I'm saying? You have these trade barriers that favor so-called developing nations, and all of these things that keep the self-determination and economic self-reliance off the table for these places. So when you're talking about somebody being the director general of a World Trade Organization, come on, sis. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? What kind of standards do we have? So I'm gonna continue. According to a 2011 World Bank report, 57% of women in Nigeria ages 16 to 57 were in some form of employment. However, the report laments at the fact that the employment is primarily in the informal sector, which it argues prevents women from benefiting from gender and equity laws. This is the trick that they use often. And this is probably why we don't see a lot of uproar when it comes to like African women and the pocket that U.S. imperialism and other kinds of imperialism puts us in, and it makes our rescuing part of the as the precondition for instituting capitalist colonial policies, right? Oh, we got to get these women out of these backward, non-equitable types of employment. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to put them into this system where they can get a job and we get microloans and we can do all these sort of strategies to get them, get their food vending shop that they was hustling on the side, making money, trying to, feed their family. Now is tied to some sort of capitalist scheme that's siphoning money off even that woman who's been working on the road trying to hustling and making her stuff work, as opposed to like really dumping the money so that she can have her own restaurant and that she can and she can empower some other women to have their own restaurant in that same community, and they can have a string of restaurants that's going to feed the community. They have access to farmlands that bringing them fresh food. This is the kind of like economics that needs to be supported. Instead, what we're seeing is that we need to get you into a microloan so that we can really have you and solve your problems through capitalist strategies. But you never solve your problem through these capitalist strategies, right? Like so like really looking at that too. So I go on to say that, make no mistake, the World Bank's interest in gender equality in Africa is the same as it has been since Europe first attacked Africa, which is to use African labor and resources for the complete benefit of white power and to uphold a worldwide system of capitalism. The strategy to ensure African women have the same pathway into capitalist economic system as African men only strengthens the stranglehold that capitalism has on the economy and controls the labor value of African workers. The more that we believe in capitalism, the more that we believe that it's a solution for us in any way, shape, or form, microloans, whether it is a finance minister over in Nigeria or the vice president who is telling us that they're doing these things for equity for African people, and I'm doing X, Y, and Z. The more that they have us believe in this strategy, this scheme of colonial capitalism, the more that they've won from us. And of course, again, I'm gonna go back to it. I'll repeat myself a lot. It's like, what are the demands that we are making for us? Like, why is this not sufficient? Because they keep us, they keep many of us tied to this idea that, see, we are making a pathway for you as a Black person to be in these positions of power. And even though the position of power is within a whole system that is parasitic, we still are making a place for you. And you should be happy about that, because now you have a chance, little black girl, to now be a part of the system and be our administrator too, right? You have a chance to now help us continue to exploit and oppress, colonize people around the world. Oh, what an amazing opportunity that is. I'm being facetious, obviously. The fight against the capitalist economy. What Okonjo Iweala and her ilk contribute to Africa is the ongoing disruption to the emerging African economies that develop out of the need of the African working class, some of whom are the street vendors, local farmers, tailors, and builders. In her new role at the WTA, her first priorities are to broker trade negotiations between US and China, two countries who represent an increasing threat to economic self determination in Africa. Clearly, representation is not enough. African women, neocolonial agents, have to be disarmed through an examination of who they are and what they represent. It's not good for us to appreciate a Black woman's face on white policy, particularly when the policy robs us of our self determination. For our support, we must demand to see a track record of substantive examples of how their policies contribute to the destruction of the colonialist shackles that imprison the majority of African women, relegating us to a life of subsistence and violence. And representation matters has been pushed out a lot, particularly around elections, electoral politics, and other sorts of things, to make sure that, like I said, to make sure that, Black people can see themselves in the politic of these colonizers. But again, the colonizers don't represent our interests. And it also forces us to consume the idea that the more the African petty bourgeoisie accomplishes in the white ruling class arena, the more we have progressed. So nothing can be further from the truth, particularly in the US, as Africans have experienced the devastating impact of COVID-19. I wrote the story on COVID-19. Um, so so even as we talk about that, like representation mattering, representation in Africa, for example, is centered around this gender and ethnic identity, where a Konjo, an African woman, is somebody who's like, oh, she's an African woman. But let's not get it twisted here. Like, Africa has had more female presidents than any place in the world. Like, in Africa alone, there has been more female representation in terms of leadership of the country. So, for example, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became the first female president in Liberia in 2006. Joyce Banda became the first female president in Malawi in 2012. And in Rwanda, 64% of the seats in parliament are held by African women. Yet in none of these places have the special oppression of African women been lifted. And even in Tanzania, we have a new African woman president of Tanzania. That's how you pronounce it, right? And so where are we, looking? What are we expecting from this woman, as well as what we've expected from others? So, like, yeah, I'll end it there. So, like, yeah, there's a real interesting way that we should shift, our expectations and what we want people to say about us. Like, where's the okay, that's what it actually. But yeah, I think that it's really important for Black women to really say to ourselves, like, what are we expecting? What do we really want? And I recognize that everybody's a revolutionary. Not everybody needs to the overthrow or struggles for the overthrow of colonialism to be a part of their daily mantra. But we asking you to take that on, because that will help you clearly define, like, what position, what side of the road you're going to be on. A few years ago, Comrade Director Aisha Fields and I did a breakdown, and we broke down Kamala Harris when she first came into office. And one of the clips that we used was from an interview that somebody had did of Angela Davis, who they asked, what does she think about Kamala's vice presidential candidacy. And we talked about it, and we said that, people are saying that she's like, Davis said that she's going to dwell in the contradiction. She wants to live in the contradiction of so that she can understand it more, as opposed to, demanding that no woman, African or otherwise, be at the helm of U.S. imperialism, and that these sort of lightweight touches that, socialists and other leftists kind of do and kind of shift with from time to time is really unhelpful. It doesn't lead us anywhere. It doesn't give us the final conclusion. It doesn't demand from themselves or other people that we got to get free. And that's the crime. That is the absolute crime. And so like when we talk about these phrases, black excellence, black uh it's also like this new idea of like the talented 10th, right? Like is the talented 10th idea. Like we are so exceptional within the scope of this thing without having to destroy it. And the idea is that the more that we fill these roles as the administrators of the bourgeoisie, as neo-colonizers in the African petty bourgeoisie, the idea for many people are saying that we're going to take over and it's going to shift the way things are done. Not if what you've learned as the way that you've shifted yourself is to uphold the status quo, not to destroy it, to maintain it. To maintain it. It's not going to be like black power, like you have to destroy the whole foundation of this parasite. All of it. All of it. All of it. It has to go. Has to be, how y'all clean chitlins. You gotta scrape out the bowels. You gotta and then boil it. Boil it and then fry it up. However y'all prepare that nastiness. you gotta or just throw the whole thing away. Maybe you don't even mess with it all. Just throw the whole thing away. But you got to do something to the bowels of capitalism to get rid of it in order to, create a sentient being that is worthy of rectifying this whole thing. Because you know what capitalism does. You know what colonialism does to the environment. You know what it does to people. You know what it does to systems and economies. It's a killer. And any African person that upholds that in any kind of way and revels in the seat that they get in these positions, you are misguided if you think you're going to make any changes. But most of these people don't even say that they're going to make any changes at all whatsoever, or that their position is like, I'm gonna go in here and like make it good for even Nigeria for this woman. Like she's not even saying that. And most recently, she signed Ngozi Okonjo, I can't say the whole last name. She signed a deal with the FIFA president to make sure that no, she signed a deal that would encourage FIFA. I don't know, is it FIFA? It's the soccer people, for making their clothing and stuff with using African cotton. Girl, they got us out here in the fields cutting cotton again for these white people. You know what I mean? Like that's the deal she signed. She's brokering with the European colonizers to make sure that Africa becomes a plantation for white people. I don't even know what to tell you beyond that. Like, so it's a little bit frustrating to see that, and us just like, oh yes, more of that, more. As it's just not. It's just I don't even know. I don't even have full language for how this is not the place for us to actually want to be, right? So the next piece I'm going to read from is, I thought I had both of them. Is actually this piece called "Killing Becky Means Struggling for Black Power," and it's another piece that I talked about the identity, the petty bourgeoisie, and how it manifested itself in the sorry, I thought I had it up, but I don't have it up. Here we go. Manifesting itself in the way that we see ourselves, and even in Revolutionary Black Organization. And it was really a critique of how we've experienced the African petty bourgeoisie inside of revolutionary organization and how in our organization, and a critique of how their behaviors really characterize somebody who doesn't really believe in the overthrow of parasitic capitalism. But we're a mass organization. We don't really require that from you, but you should at least want to see solutions being had or being created that will solve some of the contradictions that we're experiencing as a result of colonialism. And so some of that we really had to struggle with. And when the name of the article is like Killing Becky, because killing the Becky inside ourselves, one of our comrades in the past called like, I need to kill the Becky in me. The Becky is the idea. It's the Karen. It's like the assumption that you want to be like a white woman. You want to ascend to their, I won't even say descend to their level of nonchalantness and be able to navigate through entire life without having to deal with contradictions, which is often the case, not the case. And there's a lot of trend now on social media that people are really applauding what they call the soft life. Like, I'm really here for the soft life. Listen, I too want the soft life, but after colonialism is defeated and I can sit up on my land somewhere, enjoying all of the natural resources that should be coming to me, and all I gotta do is, twiddle some straw between my teeth and work for, the betterment of my people because we have power. That is the soft life that I am acquiring, but not soft life under colonialism. Does that make sense? Like, I recognize that, people are not in love with struggle, and sort of these ideas, these phrases that kind of help us believe in a place where we don't have to struggle so much, get a doctor's position or be an engineer or be a ballerina and do all these other kinds of, and I keep saying the ballerina because that was a lot. I saw that a lot when those hip play, those Black women who are ballerinas and doing hip hop dances. And I saw that a lot in terms of that. Like, people were like, Black girl magic, Black excellence, and all these other kind of things. And I like a good Black woman that can dance any old day. Listen, I love us when we dance, but that doesn't equate to, like, busting down imperialism. That just equates to, oh, we're now in a space that has been traditionally white and we are doing it our way with hip leg, So that's, all of these things. It just really has to really open ourselves up to a different way of thinking. So killing Becky means struggling for Black power. I'm going to start in the middle of it. It says struggle between the working class and the petty bourgeoisie. In order to accomplish our objective, which is to fill our ranks with the African poor working class women so that we can solve the problems and contradictions that come as a result of being colonized, we have struggled with our members to abandon a petty bourgeois aspirations and contribute their skills to the interests of the African working class, which sometimes can be really hard because people don't even recognize that they are the bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie. They might be coming from working class families and they've got a little bit of something here and they have it, but they, when it comes down, like, the thing that really helps us open up, expose the petty bourgeois itness in folks is like our campaign work. It's like, what can you do to make this campaign work happen? It's like, well, I don't really, we get kind of that, like, what? Why are we do? Oh, or they kind of take it on really sluggishly or haphazardly because they don't really believe in the campaign in of itself. Again, you don't have to be a revolutionary wanting to overthrow the system of capitalism to be a member of ANWO. But if you're going to be a member of ANWO, you should support its campaigns, right? Like, you should support, like, what it is that we represent in the lives of working class African women. And you can support that with your dues payment, or you can support that through actually being a part of, like, the active work to, carry out a campaign. So we've had struggles with people coming into the organization and not really realizing that, this is not high level stuff where you don't have to touch the African working class. Like, this is the stuff that puts you right in with the African working class. The same people that you talk shit about online, the same people that you got something to say about, the same people that I don't understand why. So this is the struggle that we had earlier on in our existence as an organization. And there's also people who believe that they are the radical petty bourgeoisie. Like, there are people who, like, Angela Davis. I keep saying her because that's everybody knows who she is. Like, she's associated with the Black Panthers, and she is somebody who's an educator and, somebody who's seen as progressive and, Black and shit, and I'm like, well, that was what I would call, like, a radical petty bourgeoisie, right? Like, you don't believe in the radical overthrow of imperialism, but you talk about it in a way that kind of gets people thinking, but not thinking to the point that they would actually organize themselves. For one, because you yourself are not a part of organization, which is a critical issue in how you're going to get free, is how you're going to do it by yourself. You got to be a part of organization. And number two, like, what are you leading people to other than just like your epiphanies in your head? Like for me, like I don't have these epiphanies all the time. Like I write stuff, I put things out. But the purpose of all of this is to organize and bring people to the African National Women's Organization and the African People's Socialist Party so that we can get free, y'all. Like that's the goal. And to break down all those barriers that colonialism puts in front of you, physical and otherwise, ideological mostly, because that's what's weighing on us right now. This is why all these sort of soft life, Black excellence, Black girl magic, all these things are things that that bring us back to this place where we are not really challenging the status quo. So yeah, the struggle constantly emerges. I'm reading again. The struggle constantly emerges because the characteristic of the African Petit Bourgeoisie is to be liberal. And if you don't understand what liberalism is, read Combat Liberalism by Mao Zedong, who is the communist leader of China. And he wrote this incredible document called Combat Liberalism, which names how someone can be liberal. And liberal is not, some of y'all might consider yourselves liberal, because that seemed like something to be like you should be liberal because you don't want to be backwards as a conservative. So you want to be a liberal, but liberals are like toxic as hell too, because liberalism really doesn't solve anything, rise the fence, really is not motivated to really, overturn the system of imperialism, just kind of rise the fence in the middle and try to seize where their land, depending on what the politic is at any given time. So anyway, read Combat Liberalism by Chairman Mao Zedong. Check it out. Since they do not believe in African liberation, the African petty bourgeoisie, they do not have a vision of a free future. So their free future is the free future that they envision as they get ascending higher and higher into the African petty bourgeoisie, if they get that far. If they don't get knocked out because of the economic situation back down to the African working class, and if they don't sacrifice the interests of the African working class for their own, because oftentimes the African petty bourgeoisie will do that. In some cases, the African petty bourgeoisie has contempt for the African working class, which is evidence in their unwillingness to engage in basic organizing in our communities. This is the thing that really gets me. They will work harder. The African petty bourgeoisie will work harder for capitalist industries and for bourgeois institutions rather than work hard for the revolution. This is something that I've been in this work as a part of the Uhuru movement for like a while, not as long as a chairman, but a while. And I get it all. Like I heard it all. Like, I got my job and this takes, I can't do that because of my job. Or I don't have time for this other stuff that y'all doing. Like I gotta, I just gotta go home and sleep. Like this is like careering revolutionary is being a revolutionary is a career life choice. And you do it when you don't have to do the thing that pays your bills, right? Like unless revolution can pay my bills like that, what I'm saying? So you do things you must do to survive. But that is not the thing that I'm trying to make bigger. The thing that I'm trying to make bigger is the African Revolution. So that's my primary focus and what I spend most of my time thinking about every single day. Problems I'm trying to solve, obviously as the president of the African National Women's Organization. How much more can we get out into the world to talk about this question of revolution? How much more can we influence in the minds of our people that we got to get free? And what other examples can we show folks of why we need to get free? Who are the people that we must challenge and push back against? And this is like really important for us to get in front of us, because if we don't do that constantly, then anything that the colonizer puts in front of us as a solution for a problem whether it's in brown face, black face, or whatever, is something that we will take. It's something different. For example, a cousin of mine, lived in Venezuela, hated the Maduro Chavez regime, and wanted something different, right? I said, okay, cool. You don't like what they do, then what is it that you're requiring of the next person that you want to take their place? I just want them in something different. Okay, what it is that you require of your government that will be different from what Maduro and Chavez has offered the people, right? And he couldn't tell me. He couldn't tell me because anything different from what somebody has in front of them can be seen as a solution. And there was you could see that throughout the world, right? You could see that where somebody has been in power for like 50 years and their whole family has been the leadership of that country or whatever, something like what we've seen in Niger recently. And people are just like, I'm done, get him out of the way. Let's get somebody new up in there. But what's the politic of this new person? Did we create this new person? Did we give them the politic to put themselves in office? Therefore, so if any old body that's just new and different comes into office, then we're like, okay, great. At least it's not the same old legacy crew that's been doing it. So we have no demands of these people again. And this is what U.S. imperialism, capitalist colonialism does to us. It just punches us, softens us up, keeps assaulting us ideologically and otherwise, and then say, here, this is what you want. You want this person, this neo-colonizer in this position, and he's different because he's not the same old person. And we accept it, even though this person may not do anything that we need them to do, to ensure the better life and sustainability of our people. So where are we on time? Just want to make sure that I'm not going over. I don't even know. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna break here, and I'm going to allow Comrade Coco to come back on and make some announcements, and then we can open it up for questions. We'll look at some of your comments, and then we can close out of our program. So thank y'all so much for watching. Stay tuned. There's more to come, more comments and interactions. Comrade Coco, you want to take it away?
Can you? All right, Uhuru. I couldn't see myself. Uhuru, everyone. That was a powerful discussion. Like all the points. It's like you put a lot in there. So we're on our way to the Q&A section, but before we do that, we want to go ahead and go into our announcements for annual. Let me share that information here. So sorry, I should have this fired up already. All right. So if you enjoyed what we discussed today or what President Yesterday discussed today, we called on African women from around the world to join the African National Women's Organization. We are the only anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, revolutionary organization for Black women. We have members in Africa, Europe, and the United States. Join the international collective of women building in the revolutionary capacity for African women. To learn more about membership, join or visit anwaohuru.org/join. I'm so excited about this. Okay. Shape the world, don't just be in it, which is a theme for our 2023 Cadre Development School. Registration is now open. The African National Women's Organization's Cadre Development School is a 6-week virtual program aimed at training our members, recruits, and any African women interested in learning about the role of African women in the ongoing African Revolution. During the fall cadre school, we will engage in a study of revolutionary political theory and deepen our practice of revolutionary activism. Registrants can look forward to a full curriculum covering the following topics: exploring African women's liberation through an African internationalist perspective, capitalism versus socialism, community organizing, practice real world assignments, critical thinking, and critical response organizing. The Fall Cadre Development School runs weekly for 2 hours from October 7th to November 18th. Registration closes this September 30th. So you want to make sure that you register. You can go ahead and visit tinyurl.com/2023 cadre to register. my decolonase. I think I put this up here. If you can see it, this is my decolonase. So support Amwell's economic development project, Decolonase Hair and Body. Decolonase Hair and Body are natural personal care products that highlight the natural ingredients and traditional care practices used by Indigenous people all over the world, in addition to featuring images and quotes of revolutionaries. Support with your purchase today at decolonase.com. Hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. Support the Uhuru 3 in our fight against the U.S. indictments. Defend the African freedom struggle. Defend African liberation struggle. Defend the Uhuru movement. Handsoffuhuru.org. We are always looking for people to volunteer with us. As President yesterday said, we all have our full-time jobs or, our hustles and everything that we need to, have our material needs. But until we build the African and win the African liberation, we have to put that work in, and you can go ahead and volunteer with us if you're willing to put that work in. And was looking for producers, interpreters, chat moderators, and advocates. You can email us if you're interested at info@amwelluhuru.org if you'd like to share your skills. Join us again on Sunday, September 17th at 2 p.m. for a monthly interview, news, and analysis program, The Breakdown, when our topic will be Niger, Haiti, and other African news. This is a special broadcast because Jay, me, or I will be joining President yesterday on screen with our perspectives on and news from the African world and how it impact, looking at things from a revolutionary point of view, and bringing it home to like things that are happening over in the continents of Africa, things that happen in Haiti, and how they affect us here in what we can do here in the States or wherever you are watching this program. Register on our events page. You can go to amwelluhuru.org and go to the events, or you can type in enroll mem.wildapricot.com/events. We have local events. Again, we are an international organization. We have chapters all over this world. If you are in the DC area and you're concerned about your safety, you live in DC or the surrounding metro area, we encourage you to join the African Women's Self-Defense class that's going to be held next Saturday, September 23rd from 1 to 3 p.m. at Shaw Neighborhood Library. You must RSVP ahead of time, and you can do this by going to our events page on our website, or annual mem.wildapricot.com/events. Free safety giveaways for all attendees. And our last announcement is Harriet's Daughter Book Club. So we're reading Homegoing, which is a phenomenal book by Ya Ngozi. And we are discussing the second part of that book. And this book chronicles both, is a historical fiction book that chronicles a continental African perspective and lineage, and then a U.S. Lineage of two of the same family, basically, and how historical events and situations influence each family member. Is really a really good book, and the engagement has been off the charts. I invite all of you to come register, so you can go ahead and get the link at amwelluhuru.org, or you can go to MEM Wild Apricot /events and click on the Harriet's Book Club to register. So with that, we're going to go ahead and bring President Geshide back up. There we go. My power, my president, my leadership.
Hello. So I talked a lot, and I don't see a lot of questions, and I see a lot of
It's a
views.
lot of comments, but not a lot of questions, which
Yes.
is great. But I do encourage everyone to let's deepen this discussion. I know you discussed on a lot of things, so I think we have room to break it down.
Well, I'm a
I
there's
see
one.
one here.
Yeah, I pinned
I
one.
see one
It's
from
a comment.
EL.
Yeah.
EL on it. Every comment.
And I'm pinning, like, I saw these comments. Yes, Kamala starts dancing right around election time. She will offer anything except substance. Tell it.
Absolutely.
I saw, we be on the gram. We be on the gram, on the twits, on the tweet. Well, it's not Twitter no more, it's X. We be seeing y'all comments, and you know, what was my point? My point was that Kamala, we actually posted something on our Instagram, and I comment was like, you can like hip hop as an imperialist too, you know, and it doesn't really equate to anything for Black people. But of course, she never. Never.
I saw somebody defending her, like
Oh
she
yeah, I did see that.
this and that, and I'm just like, none of that, none of that, helps helps my cousins and stuff like that. That's locked up in California, everywhere else. None of that helps the real us for real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that. Probably that African woman who was running through all the things that Kamala has done as vice president. She forgot the fact that she was also caping for U.S. imperialism when she tried to, negotiate these African people to try to come to this conference, this African U.S. summit and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like these are the things. Like, you just omit that, right? It's really important for us to. Are you talking? Oh no, that's me. Yeah, it's really important for us to like say, yeah, there are people who can do stuff. Like, what is his name? Broadway Joe Biden. Is that what they call him? I don't know. Broadway Joe Schmo was out here, calling African people out their names, and all of a sudden he's like the great white hope for Black folks. And I'm just like, there are people who have done stuff in their younger years, but he wasn't too young. Broadway Joe, about 80 years old, so 40 years. Jim Crow Joe. Thank you, Jay. um, yeah, but 80, he's about 80 years old, ain't he? Ain't he? He almost dead. So he's been an adult for a very long time. So we do have to look at his track record. He's about the age that I would be. I'm his age, of what he would have been 40 years ago. And as a 40-something-year-old woman, I'm just like, I know better. So like, so we can't excuse something that somebody has done in the past, especially if they weren't like 10. You know what I mean? Like, you're an adult person, you're in the world, you recognize contradictions, people vying for their own self-determination. And as a person, you can't stand in the way of that. And if you have, then yeah, that's the indicator that you are not a good person. And that's somebody that we should be supporting. How do we combat the propaganda that is currently targeted towards Africans, especially African women? I would say, um, just looking at stuff like this, studying, really being a dialectician. And I often say that a lot because I find that it has helped me an incredible amount, is to actually break down what is actually happening in the world. And also what are, really, and analyze what I require as a Black person. Like, what do I need to see? And I would hope that every Black person wants to be free. I would hope that every Black person requires like tangible shifts that improve the conditions of our lives and give us access to the things that were previously stolen from us. So if the person in front of us, the propaganda machine, is telling us that we should ignore our wants and our needs, not even our desires, our wants and our needs, then that's how we have to be like, wait, why are they telling me that I should be on board with this? And particularly in the U.S. around these elections, the way that they prop up Black women in particular, that y'all are the savior, y'all are the mammies for the empire. I need a meme for, like, I need this meme to happen. I don't know if Jay gonna make it or whoever. Like, mammies for the empire has got me gagging, son. Like, it really is, like, like, really, it has us propped up to, like, support. Get ready, y'all, Black women. We about to do it again. We about to rush it. Get ready. We about to save it all. And Black women like, yes, it's all on me. We gotta do it again, And the thing is, it's like, what y'all gonna do again? What in these 4 years was it Jim Crow Joe ever done for Black people? And I mean it for real, in a real tangible way. You can't be like, oh, he's done this on this thing in the US, but like putting out oppressive shit around the world, like crushing self-determination in other places. Like, this is the thing. Like, it can't be like this US center thing. I can't be in that life, And you gotta be able to say, oh, he's done this thing, but like, if he's out here like trashing the rest of the world and bringing mayhem as the head of US imperialism, then ma'am, sir, we don't need that kind of support at all whatsoever. We have to challenge it at every single step. You can't be like, I like Joe today and then I don't like him tomorrow, and that sort of thing. Yeah, Jim Crow Joe. Okay,
that's all.
I'm
Jim
cool
Crow
with it. Jim Crow Joe. There should be like a meme too with him,
his
like
redlining
with like a US. That image of what is it, Uncle Sam with the little hat. You should be him like shuffling across. I don't know, some cages or something of Black people imprisoned in them. You know what I mean? So
like maybe cause of the Petit Boo. Look.
Yes, yeah. I thought it was a little strong when I wrote it, but I wasn't going to take it back. It really is cool, sort of thing. That's what you do when you call out the African petty bourgeoisie. Is like, you're like, who else is out there? This is, I talk about social media a lot because that's what we're all on. And there's this one where there's a call that's when you find your person and they come out of the bushes somewhere. And that's what Black excellence and Black magic does for Black women to gag on. It's like, I really want to see, this is what I want to see as an African revolutionary. I want to see Assata Shakur off of the U.S. terrorist list, period.
Can we? Yeah. Why isn't that even, I don't understand.
And Kamala Harris ass need to be the one that be pushing that. If that was me.
Right.
But if that was me, she would be off this U.S. terror list.
She's the police, so.
Well, that's what I would do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are the type of things that I would demand of myself and of a Black woman who's in office. Like, why is she even on this U.S. terror list still? You know what I'm saying? She free, y'all. Like, let her go. But that's not what they are going to do. They're going to hold you accountable for the crimes against colonial oppression. And as long as she lives, she's going to be on that. That's what So what else can we put in the chat that we want to see? I want to see these comments go up. Like, people are still watching. So what else do you want to see as a Black person? What are the demands that you require of somebody who's in leadership? What do you demand for yourself that you want to see from somebody else who's trying to, who's in power in some kind of way? You know what I mean? So, I'm over it, all of the propaganda around Black women. I love me some Black women. I'm a Black woman myself, in case you didn't tell. And I love Black women and femmes, and I really want to see us survive. I love Black people, period.
Black men, Black women.
Yes. All of the behind me. Everybody, you know what I mean? And we want to see Black people have the life that we should have had if it was not for the interruption in our self-determination from the attack on our continent. And what we're experiencing right now in the world is a crisis of imperialism, because imperialism does not have the teeth that it did before, especially U.S. imperialism. It's like, we got too many players out here contending for the hegemony that the U.S. have had in the world. And so, cool, this is Sunday's program. But we got it out here.
Right, hands up, right.
So, like, there's a lot of positions that can be and are being played right now And so the U.S. hegemony in the world is really shaky, and the crisis is deepening, and the African petty bourgeoisie is nervous. And I believe it might have been somebody in our organization, I can't remember, but the African petty bourgeoisie are going to be the first line of defense. You're going to fight them harder than you do the bourgeoisie. Just to
Especially
get
now
through.
with BRICS.
You're going to have to fight the African petty bourgeoisie harder because then you do the bourgeoisie before you even get to the white folks out here controlling everything. Them petty bourgeoisie Africans are going to be in the front telling you can't do it. you can't stop my 401k. It's going to be them that you got to cut down. You know what I mean? So like this is like it's really a dangerous time. It's really a dangerous. The African petty bourgeoisie is really a dangerous class in and of itself. Because as history has told us, the African petty bourgeoisie has sacrificed the long-term interests of the African freedom struggle for their own self-interest. That's why you see so many people, particularly I say Africa and the Caribbean, sacrifice, have their Benzes rolling around on unpaved streets, wearing $5,000 cufflinks, and go to the hospital in Paris when they get sick, because they don't want this money to fix the road, or to ensure that the person down the street has enough to eat, or any of that. They rather wear it on their body and drive in it, because this is the way that they equalize themselves to the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie is doing it. The bourgeoisie has all of these things. And as an African petty bourgeoisie, why can't I wear all these jewelries and things like that to kind of validate myself as somebody who's equitable to that? But if you can see how these people interact with the colonizer, they don't have confidence at all. It's very paper thin. They don't have any confidence at all in themselves. African people is always in what the colonizer can give them, and they will shuck and jive in order to make sure that they can get the little pieces of stuff, that the colonizer drops down. So there's no confidence. The African people have no confidence in themselves.
I just read an article about, Black petty bourgeoisie in the continent of Africa adopting British accents as their new adopting British accents. And it's like, wait, what?
But that's not even new, because my family's from the Caribbean, and let me tell you, when you British up your Jamaican accent, that tells you that you are hoity-toity. You know what I mean? Like you have education when you don't put the patois in the Jamaican lingo. You know what I mean? Like so like that's not new. And of course, like this is the playground for European imperialism is these lands and these places that we are now living. And so we can't be, ignorant of the fact that, the reason why the people in the Caribbean wear those white wigs when they become a judge or a lawyer because the colonizer, and the reason why they continue to uphold that is because of the colonizer and the neo-colonizers that continue to, make the path, clear the path for the colonizer to come in and exploit and oppress we folks. And I wanted to say something about the World Trade Organization and the IMF Bank and all of these people. These are institutions of coercion and power grabbing for our people. Institutions of coercion, not good at all. Not one piece of it. Not any policy they put down is for the interest of the people who are being railroaded. There's not an economy. There's no so-called developing nation economy that has emerged from the policies of the World Trade Organization and the IMF World Bank. None. Period. It only allows for the further exploitation of these countries. And, that's why I'm really waiting for, one African country to happen. So the more coups and the more revolutionaries that emerge out of these processes of getting rid of the colonizers, I'm here for it. I really, really, really am here for it. And we need to make sure that we deepen that analysis around these issues. And I'm, really excited about doing that on Sunday. And what is your party's position? I see it. And African women revolutionaries on mandated as far.
It's COVID, the colonial disease.
What is your party's position in African women revolutionaries on mandated as far as COVID-19? Mandates. Okay. I mean, we recognize that. What is it? I don't even have an official position per se, really. Our position is that we want to make sure that African people are safe. And when we had, in the middle of the COVID-19 epidemic, we created a a response to the COVID. It was the People's War. Yeah, it was the People's War, and we have another organization, our sister organization called the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project, that was given the mandate by our party leaders to create a response to that. So therefore, what we were doing was trying to give as much help through our doctors that were aligned with our revolutionary trajectory, and giving access to people who might need to consult with a medical professional. In terms of vaccines, I mean, it's really up to the person who wants to take it or not. Obviously, people have taken it because they might be they feel like they need it. But, you know, our position really is that we're trying to keep African people safe. And we've done that through our campaign. We've allowed people who did not have access to medical professionals to then have access to medical professionals. We've organized in the community and tell people about how they can keep themselves the safest and how to minimize their risk to, get the COVID colonial virus. But we also recognize that the colonial virus was created by the colonizer, right? Like it was all these conditions that exist in the world that allow for, what kills so many people to emerge in the United States and in other places around the world. And even when there were revolutionary countries like Cuba and some other places that were developing and working very hard to develop a vaccine that can minimize the impact of the virus on people, the U.S. didn't have anything. They didn't want anything to do with that. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but we don't have an official position, but we do want to keep our people safe, and we did initiate programs to ensure that we can keep as many of our people safe as we possibly could.
I just added ADEPS.
Good.
To
for the Black Ankh instead of the Red Cross. We call it the Black Ankh, yes. Thank you so much for that question. Who's that? 411. The number lady, the number person. I don't know if you're a lady. Number person. 411 something process. What movie? I can't see any of these things, but I know it's somewhere.
Said, want to see a movie. Yeah, you're supposed to have your glass on. Want to see a movie that shows a vision of African internationalism spreading.
What's that movie? Depiction of white
That's
life.
what they want to see. They want to see a movie.
Oh, yes. Listen, if I ever get this book written, anyway, it's the future. But I want to thank all of you. Oh, there's another. Peace and love, sisters. What I want to see as a Black woman is when I did ask the question. When we as a collective Black people will become our divine selves again and rebuild a way from what our people never needed and get back. Okay.
Dual and contending power. That was like everything to me.
Yes. What I think is really important is the dual and contending power is creating our own institutions so that we don't have to go to theirs. But also, don't expect that when we create our own institutions, they're going to leave us alone. So you do have to fight for your stuff, right? Like you do have to fight. You have to build security around you. You have to build a political basis for why you're doing these dual and contending powers that the party has done. Because when they attack you, because they will, they will create the narrative about what kind of evils you are. And they have done it to us on many times. The reason why this Black group of Black folks deserve to be bombed in the middle of Philadelphia, the reason why this group of Black folks need to be murdered in the streets of California and New York and Chicago, around the country. They've created these bombed in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They've created the conditions and the narratives for why we are the big Black people. So it's really important that if we are creating real projects to self-determination, that we actually are a part of organization, that we can defend it, and that we do more than just defend this little pocket of things, but that we actually hope to make it a part of the growing African revolutionary state, right? Like we should hope to be in power and utilize these programs and ideas and all of that to increase the life of Black people and not just keep it in a pocket. We have to make it bigger because Black people, we don't need much. vision to say what we need, right? Like we know what we need, the basics. We need the basics. And if we got the basics, you know, there's no limit to what we're able to accomplish, you know.
And we
No,
don't have to go. We built the technology. We source we are our people have live in the resources. So it's not, you know, people always have this phantom thing that, you know, we had to go back to no power and no, I'm like, no, we
got
who
it.
you think work climb
We got it.
the towers?
We got
You
it.
know,
We got it.
this
No
is ours.
problem. No problem. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to this African Woman Must Lead. I'm really looking forward to, please tune in again to us on Sunday with the breakdown when Jay and Coco and I are going to talk about Niger and all the loveliness that we see happening in the African world, and and a lot of the contradictions that we're going to hold ourselves to as well. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you again on Sunday. Uhuru. African women must join the African National Women's Organization. Hit that join button on our page, and we'll see you very, very soon. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.